any further ado, let's jump into social media. I don't know about you, but when social media first started to come out, I don't remember the first ones, but the one most of us remember, some of us remember, is MySpace, which was one of the first things, and it's all but disappeared at this point. But I remember I was in student ministry when things like smartphones and things were coming out, and so kids didn't really have them, and still on youth trips and things like that, we wouldn't even let them bring cell phones. How the world has changed. And we had to sit back as student pastors and say, are we going to use this media as the way that we reach young people? And there was mixed. I mean, you could still today find just as many articles that say, no, don't touch it ever, as you can with those that say, yes, you have to embrace it. The reality that we've come to, and certainly you probably have come to, even though almost none of us in this room were born with a device in our hand, which is different from now and the generations we have today, is that social media is the world in which anyone aged 35 and under lives. It's reality. It's not going anywhere. It is the way they work together, they build relationships. Many businesses do business through social media. You never would have thought that you could sit at home and make YouTube videos and be a millionaire. So what do you do all day long? Absolutely nothing, and get paid for it. That is the goal of millennials and Generation Z. Certainly Generation Z. Their goal in life is to do what they love and make money doing it. And so they can sit at home and play video games all day. There's people who get paid to play video games all the time. This is the world they live in. So as parents and as leaders of young people, we have a reality. We can ignore it and say, close our eyes, it's going away. Or we can figure out how to work within it. And so that's a call you have to make as parents, but I'm going to give you some of the things we've learned and some of the things that we know and hopefully help you make those decisions. But as we do, but our goal this morning is very simple. We want to equip you guys to make an environment shift. Okay, we have to shift the environment. We have to shift the culture. We cannot sit back and say the way we did it is the way it has to be done. Don't make that mistake like all the generations before us. Because it's just different, and the world is going to go on without us, okay, if we don't make an environment shift. This is the world we live in. We want to make that shift at home that helps our students thrive in their use of electronics and social media, and that doesn't change with every trend that comes along. So we want to change an environment that goes from, we as parents know nothing about it, we don't want to dab in it, we don't want to know about it, to understanding and helping our children navigate the world in which they live in, because this is the world in which they live in. They don't even teach stranger danger anymore. Do you know that? Schools don't teach stranger danger anymore, because the research suggests that it doesn't matter. Strangers aren't the problem. Students are kidnapped or trafficked by people they know. That's how it works. So everything we say, hey, don't talk to strangers, well, the statistics grossly outweigh the reality of that even being a necessary thing to teach. And so it's better that we teach them to live in the environment in which they have than focus on things that may or may not even exist. So some of you in here, you're on this, get rid of social media, it's horrific, it's bad. I will tell you, I believe social media is probably the worst thing that's happened to American culture. I will say that, and I firmly believe that. All of a sudden, you gave everybody an opinion, and you gave them thousands of people to hear their dumb opinions. Okay? That's the reality. If not, just get on Facebook. Pay attention and watch. And now, all of a sudden, here we are. I don't think it's been positive. I don't think it's been positive for communication. I don't think it's been positive for much of anything. But this is the reality of the world we live in. So what are we going to do? We're going to sit back and say, you know what? It shouldn't be there, so I'm not going to deal with it. Well, this is the world. We watched The Great Indoors. Anybody see that one? Yeah, it's a brand new show, and I don't know if we'll keep watching it because it's a little filthy at times. But the entire thing about the show, it's on CBS, is the reality of this guy who's an adventure guy, and it used to be a print magazine. And he was the guy out in the field climbing mountains and this, that, and the other, and writing stories from being out in the field. And now it's called The Great Indoors because the entire magazine is a bunch of young people that sit in an office, have never been outside, and write articles and build an online magazine, because it's not print, about things in nature. And they've never been out there. And now he has been brought out of the field because nobody cares anymore, and that's not selling magazines, and they've canceled the print edition altogether, and they only have the online edition, and now he's their boss. and he's never really used a cell phone. And he's about my age, and this gap. And so that's what they're trying to portray as the world in which we live in. A bunch of young people that know nothing but technology, and that's the only way they interact, to those of us who are absolutely clueless and how we all work together. If you're in the professional world, you are facing this crisis right now. If you are in the professional world and work with other humans, because they're younger and the gap is just ridiculous. But it's not going backwards. So once they get rid of it, well, this is a book called Right Click. We'll tell you about that in a minute. Like it or not, we cannot remove digital media from our kids like a stain and get them to think about media and use it like we do. That's not the world they live in. It's not the one they're going to live in. And so as parents, we need to be growing adults. We talked about it last time. We need to be raising adults. They've got a world they're going to live in. The biggest stumbling block for parents is often not what we do, but how we think about media. When we fail to understand how our kids think about it, our conversations, our boundaries, rules, and good decisions get lost in translation. So we have to, as the more mature, more responsible person in the relationship with our children, begin to seek to understand where they are coming from. Now, this has been a challenge for parents throughout centuries. Just be like me. Why is that so hard? I've survived, I've got a job, I function well in society. Why can't I just do? Because the world is different. The world is different. I did not grow up in a global community. I didn't know what was happening in Russia, the Middle East. I didn't care. All I cared about was getting home from school, going outside, and playing with my friends. That was life. Now our kids, they have the entire world. They know the whole world. It's a completely different place they're growing up in. Oh, and guess what? There's a good chance they have friends on another continent through social media. You and I never would have had it, for the most part, until we grew up. So we can't just get rid of it. We can't go backwards. We've got to change the way we think about it. We've got to try and understand where our kids are coming from. But I think it's going to come down for us to two things, really. To raise godly disciples, that's our goal. Hopefully that's your goal. First, it starts with us. We talked about this. Our own personal growing relationship with God. If we're going to navigate the world we find ourselves in and the one our kids find themselves in, and we want to raise them to be functioning adults in society, we have to have a strong, growing personal relationship with the Lord. We have to be becoming more like Jesus Christ. We have to be becoming more and more like Him. We have to look more like Him. This is going to be a foundational principle for everything you want to work in with your children. I promise you, raising children is the hardest thing we've ever done. I think we can all agree on that. And if we are not growing in our walk with Jesus Christ, it just can become disastrous. And so we have to, it doesn't make everything go away, but it certainly does change our perspective on how we're doing it. Second, our growing relationship with our child. Growing relationship with our child. I don't remember who told me this, but rules without relationship equals rebellion. We have to have a relationship with our kids. And that relationship has to grow as they grow. You guys know this. We have to have relationships with them. We have to invest in those relationships. And we have to learn and we have to grow. Like we date our spouses, we have to do the same with our kids. You might call it something different than dating, obviously, because it's weird. But, we need to continue to invest and grow that relationship. Know what they like. Care about them. Be a part of their lives and their journey. So here's some stats for you. 70% of teens aged 13 to 17 now use smartphones. 70% use smartphones. It's ridiculous. 62% of parents don't think their teens can get into serious trouble online. I really hope you're not in that category. If you are, do not raise your hand and get out of that category. All right? 62%. 80% of parents have no idea how to monitor their kids' online activities. How many of you would hand your kids the keys to the car without any training? Yeah. But we handed something far more dangerous to them in a smartphone with very little training. It's not our fault. We didn't know. We can be honest and say we did not know when all this was coming our way. We didn't. I didn't know. You didn't know. We couldn't have known. But now we do. And after today, you'll know even more, and hopefully we'll make some shifts. 74% of parents say they don't have the time or energy to keep up with their children online. Well, I don't think I have the energy to keep up with them in real life, okay? But I've got to find that energy. We have to find that energy. 46% of teens said they would change their online behavior if they knew their parents were paying attention. 46%. That's the kids. That's what they say. If I know mom and dad are watching, I'm going to make different choices, right? That was true of me when I was a kid. Probably true of many of you. So some other stats for you. This is a little bit hard to read. 92% of teenagers report going online at least once a day. 24% repeat almost constantly. 71% of teenagers use more than one social media platform to keep in touch with friends. 76% of teens ages 13 to 17 use social media. 23% every day. 83% of young people who use social media say it makes them feel more connected to their friends. And 68% of young people who are active on social media have had people support them through tough or challenging times through social media. So we see some positive. There are some good things as we deal with this in the world that we live in. But there are also some negatives. Maybe you're familiar with some of these. Cyberbullying. The reality of bullying only digitally. This does happen. And we're not just talking about, hey, you're a dummy. Legitimate cyberbullying where kids attack other kids online, they demean them, they do ugly things, they post nasty pictures, all kinds of things. And cyberbullying is bad. Cyberstalking. Obviously, the internet, you think you're anonymous. You're not really anonymous. Someone can easily stalk you. Talk about sexting. That is where teenagers, young people, I'm sure these apply to adults too, but they use their smartphones or other digital media to have sexual relationships, either via pictures, video, or just text and verbiage about sexual related things. Temporary and anonymous apps, things like Snapchat, Kik, Whisper, WhatsApp, Ask.fm, all these things are quote-unquote anonymous. So you can go in and you don't really have to set up a profile and you just ask your questions and someone random out there answers them. They're all quote-unquote anonymous. Well, what that means, if you're anonymous, you can say whatever and do whatever you want to. Those are bad. They should be avoided. But here's the reality. Nothing digitally is anonymous. Nothing digitally is anonymous. If your kids think, if you think Snapchat videos disappear, they don't. I don't know how long they sit on Snapchat servers before they do quote-unquote disappear, but if you haven't watched the presidential race, you realize that nothing can be deleted from the internet. The highest paid, wealthiest people, most powerful people on the planet have tried to delete a digital trace, and guess what? It's still there. This is the reality of the world we live in. They can also take screenshots. So if I take a lewd picture of myself and send it to someone, and I think it's going to disappear in 5 seconds, well, they can screenshot that. And guess what? They can ruin your life. So they're not anonymous. They're not temporary. They're permanent. They don't think they are. GPS location. Almost every device has GPS location. People can find you. There's lots of apps that you get on and they find people near me, like me. That's the deal. So those things are out there. Access to pornography. Many apps feature unfiltered internet access. What does that mean? That means you're a parent. You're being proactive and you say, hey, Safari or Google, Chrome or Firefox, I've got all the limits set on all the web browsers. That's great. You should do that. But if they get in Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, any of these, they can get to the internet inside the app itself, and the internet access is unfiltered, and guess what? You're never going to know that exists. Like what? So if you're ever on Facebook and you click on an ad or a video or something, and it's an advertisement, you want to follow that link and a website opens, you are still inside of Facebook. You have not been redirected to your web browser, and that's unfiltered. Maybe your kids know that, maybe they don't, but you need to be aware of it. Don't panic yet, all right? Anonymity is not guaranteed. We talked about that. So there are some positive things. Allow students to connect with their friends on a regular basis. This is a good thing, and most kids just connect with people in their friend circle. Most kids do. Allows parents an insightful look into their lives of their children. Parents, we have never had a better way to know what our kids are doing than that. You want to know where they are and what they're doing? They posted a photo. Yeah. Several photos. There's no reason not to know. So positive feedback, likes, people following, friends can help improve their self-worth and their mood. There have been plenty of studies done on this. It connects us to the world, allows us to be proactive with things we care about. So again, they have access. They don't live in a bubble anymore. They can understand and empathize with the persecuted church, with children who are being kidnapped in other continents and other places. They can be active and involved in the world they live in. It allows for quick mass communication. In some cases, it can help them with schoolwork as they communicate with friends, or even teachers can use social media to connect with kids. So it's a lot different. So if we get home and our kids are like, "Oh, I'm supposed to bring this worksheet home," we can text another mom, "Hey, do you have this?" "Yeah," and I'll just take a screenshot of it and send it to you. Life can be a little bit easier sometimes when we talk about these things. But these are the realities. Now, I'll be honest with you, you can find far more negatives with social media than positives. You really can. Because the dangers, when you have access to the world, it can be very, very challenging for our young people. But again, this is the reality of the world that we live in. So we're either going to pretend it's not there, or we're going to help them learn to navigate within the world they have been given. And it's not going to change. We're not going backwards. So either you're going to teach them and lead them to behave properly online and in social media, or when they leave your home, they're going to figure it out sitting at a coffee shop with a bunch of 19 and 20-somethings. Your choice. But they will do it. That's the reality. And so I believe we have to help them, as with every area of life, learn to navigate the world in which they live in. And we've got to be talking about these things. We've got to help them. Because they don't know. They don't know. And they're just, in most cases, they're just exploring their phone and their world really innocently. And then they accidentally stumble upon something that is detrimental. And that can be harmful. And it's not so much the cyber stalkers that you have to worry about as much as your kids running into things like pornography that are destructive. Those are the things that they can just accidentally stumble upon, even innocently. That's how most kids get connected with pornography, is innocently at first. And so we want to try and help them navigate this world. What do I do? I've already had to sit down with my kids, and we've talked about, hey, if anyone shows you a picture of any naked human on any type of device, you walk away and you tell mom and dad about it. So they know what to do. They know what to do. And we've told them, you're not going to be in trouble for that. You didn't do that. So we want to have a conversation. So we want to be the ones that understand this, and we've told them how to deal with it. But a lot of times we don't want to talk about it, like the sex talk. Now it's the cell phone talk, right? We got to have both of those. It's expanding what we have to talk about. So what do? I want to talk about some best practices that we can consider as we look at the world and a culture shift for all of us. The first one, I think, which is the most important, is modeling. Just modeling. Are you on Facebook or Pinterest several hours a day? Well, don't then come home and say, hey, you can only be online for 30 minutes a day and you're online for 4 hours a day. You say, I'm the parent, I have the right to do that. Just because you have the right doesn't mean that you should. You can go with, do what I say, not what I do. That has never worked. They will do what you do. Model it for them. When they go to bed, get online all you want. Have fun. But while they're awake, model for them the behaviors that you want them to see with their devices. So if you get up first thing in the morning, and as soon as you get out of bed, you pull out your phone, you're checking your Facebook, you're checking your email, you're checking everything else, you are modeling a behavior for your children. When they walk in, they get up and they see that's all you're doing, well, that tells them, hey, that's okay. That's the norm of life. That's how it works when we're talking about devices. So that's not negative, but just so you know, that's what you're modeling. If you sit down at the dinner table and your phone's laying next to you and you look at that text and you pick up that phone call, you check that email while you're having dinner, guess what? You're modeling. And it doesn't compute for then you say to your kid, put your phone down at dinner. Well, Dad, your phone's not down at dinner. Mom, your phone's not down at dinner. Why does this apply to me and not to you? Well, I'm a parent, that's why. Because they're young people. They're challenging that. They're growing out of that. We want to help them. We want to show them how they're supposed to be, not simply tell them. So we want to model. This is always the best parenting tool ever, is modeling. We talked about this last time we were together. It's the best thing, modeling. You say, why did my child throw something at the TV when his team didn't score a touchdown? Probably because I did, right? I mean, they model those behaviors. That's what they do. They want to be like us, whether they tell us that or not. They want to be like us. And how many times have you had that conversation in your own mind or with your spouse? I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my mother. Oh no, if I'm honest, I'm becoming like my father. I'm becoming like my mother. Why? Because they modeled for us for so many years in our lives that we are now patterning their behavior. This is the reality. Maybe you want to be like your parents. We hope so, right? We want to do it in such a way that they do it. Communication. We got to talk about it. Clear communication and often communication. So we got to change the narrative from, hey, how was school today? Tell me what you did with your friends, because they probably didn't do much, to, hey, what'd you post on Instagram today? How'd you connect with your friends on Facebook? They're not. We want them to know what's going on. We want to communicate with them, talk to them. This is their life. This is the world they live and work in, right? This is the world they live and work in. So we want them to see that. We want them to know that, and we want them to know that we care about them. We want to communicate the dangers of social media with your child. A lot of you have done this already, or we know the dangers. A lot of you have worked with young people that have been challenged or struggled with these things. And so that's the reality. So we want to communicate those dangers with them so that they know, hey, what's going to happen when this person reaches out to me that I don't know? What am I going to do? All these things that we talk about. You got to talk to them about it. No secrets. No secrets. Research has shown with our kids that if we say, hey, give me your passwords and I can check it whenever I want to, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Because they'll delete it all long before you ever get it. They are smarter than you when it comes to technology. If you don't think so, well, wake up. Wake up. You're still learning it. How many times do you have to go there? Hey, I need to find this thing I did on Facebook. Can you help me? They know. So the better practice is, no secrets. We're going to talk about it. Hey, did you download any new apps? Okay, why did you do that? What are they? Can I look at them? Open communication. Create an environment where there are no secrets when it comes to those devices. Discuss their apps. Try to understand. Try to understand. This is how they do life. Right? This is how they have friendships. This is how they have relationships. I recognize that doesn't compute for us. It literally doesn't compute for us. The cogs don't turn in that angle to say you have a relationship that's digital. And then they see each other in public and they can't speak to each other. That's their world. That's their life. And so we have to try and understand it to the degree that we can. And know and talk, and also talk positively with them about it. Help them navigate the good in it, because it's the world that they live in. So these are some good practices that we can do as we work through these things. We want to have, again, clear expectations. Set up clear boundaries so they know, hey, you are not allowed to download any new apps without my permission. That's no biggie. They're probably not going to care about that as long as they're trying to download apps that aren't going to be a problem. And when they come to you with a new app, you're like, hey, you know what? I've never heard about that, but let's look at it together. Not a, whoa, wait a minute. We've got to just change the way we look at it. We want to have that open communication. We want to have clear expectations. Set up clear boundaries. No to this, yes to this. No, you can't do this. No, you can't use this app. You can use this app. Clear expectations. Put on your seat there just a covenant that's I found online, a site I'll give you a resource to. You don't have to use that, but we have several parents that have used these with their kids. And write it down, post it up somewhere, have them sign it, you sign it. That way nothing is just hearsay. It's all, we know what's expected. These are the expectations with your phone. Okay? Boundaries, talk about those in their online activity, what you expect. Outline the punishments. That way, you know what you're going to do. Okay, you did this, you said you wouldn't, you lose your phone for this amount of time. I'd say not more than your phone, you lose all your connectivity with the digital world for this day. Because they can get online through their Wii, through their PlayStation, everywhere, all right? So talk about those things. Boundaries should loosen as your children get older. Okay, so my 13-year-old, they've got monitoring software on their phone. I see every single thing you ever do. I monitor it. I set time limits. I set people limits. I set everything. It's locked down so tight. But my 18-year-old, almost all that's gone. Because guess what? In less than a year, they can be doing it on their own. So I'm helping them navigate their world with less boundaries as they get older. And set those up front. You and your spouse and them sit down and decide what's going to happen when. Okay, we're gonna change your daily usage. You're allowed 1 hour now, but by the time you're 18, we give you 2. You can decide however you want to do those things, but I think they should be done. And I think they should loosen as your child gets older. Because again, when they move out of your home, they go to college, or maybe they stay in your home, but you remove the restrictions because they're an adult. Now they're navigating it all by themselves. Okay? And so we want them to accidentally stumble upon those things if they're going to stumble upon them while they're in our home, and we can talk about it. Okay? So talk about online reputations. This is very important. They don't realize companies now, they're looking at their social media. So if they apply for a job, their prospective employer is going to look at their online presence. It's the truth. And we can give countless stories of young people that have lost jobs because of what they posted on social media, or who have not gotten jobs because of their social media. What's mine? I should be able to do whatever I want. Well, okay. You can hold to that if you want to. They have to be careful. Talk to them about an online reputation, just like we would the rest of the world, against the world we live in. We talk about, hey, don't embarrass me in public, right? Don't embarrass me online, all right? You know, that's the reality of the world we live in. Avoiding extremes is also important. My 5-year-old has their own device and gets on whatever, whenever. Versus my 17-year-old who has no device, no social media, no access to the digital world whatsoever. These are both extremes. Again, it's the world our kids are going into, so we have to help them learn to navigate it. All right? Doesn't mean we can't put restrictions, and we should, but we have to help them learn to work within it, because they're going to learn. Because everyone else around them, and when they say everyone else in this context, guys, they're right. They really are. You saw the stats. Was it 75% of students ages 13 to 17 have a smartphone? So if your kid doesn't, they're in the 25% range. I'm not saying you go out and buy them one. We'll talk about that in a second. But the reality is everyone else is there. Okay? And this is the world they live in, they communicate in, they work in. So we've got to help avoid those extremes. But again, as soon as they walk out of your house and have their own job, guess what they're going to do? They're going to buy a smartphone and they're going to have access to the world. If you have not trained them and taught them to work within that, they're going to have some major, major challenges. Educate and update. For you, they know what's going on. You have to stay updated. You have to educate yourself. Pay attention. We're going to give you some resources, but there's plenty of them out there if you're willing to look. There's also apps. One that I like is called Feedly. What you can do is you just type in all the blogs and things that you want to know about from that perspective, and they pull them every day. And you can open one app and just see articles pertaining to what you're looking at every single day. You don't have to look at it that often, but so what, you can set up categories. So for me, there's several different categories. There's theology, there's student ministry, there's Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this is the reality. And so there's also, technology, things like that. And so every day, every time they post a new blog, I just open up that app and it shows me those articles, those headlines. So I don't have to go searching. You kind of do one time, but then it's always there.
What's it called?
Feedly, Feedly. And there's several apps like that, but that's one that I use. It's been very, very helpful. It saves a lot of time in figuring all that out. Now, initially, you want to plug those sites in that you want to get stuff from, but it's helpful. So we want to look at some different things to help you guys out as you consider working with your students, maybe some boundaries that you want to set. I love this one as I read it, was set up times of day electronic devices are not allowed. So for us, one of those is mornings. From the time you get up until you go to school, we're not doing anything electronic. It sets the tone for the day, and we don't want that tone to be this everywhere all the time. We don't want that. We want them to have a more relaxed morning. That's just us. It may not be what you want to do, but for us, there's no electronics from the time they wake up until they go to school. Rare exceptions. They need to look up the lunch menu for the day or a homework assignment they forgot. But with rare exception, that's one of the things that we do. So set up times of day electronic devices are not allowed, and locations. So you may say, hey, electronics are not allowed in the bathroom, ever. Or Electronics are not allowed in the kitchen and the dining room ever. And these rules apply to everyone in the home. So set some safe zones. They're not allowed in your bedroom. Maybe that's what you want to set as a boundary to a certain age, So set times of day and zones that are not allowed. Okay? These are good things that we can do. And again, we're going to model those. So if we say to our kids, no electronics in the morning, then let's model that. Let's model that. I'll tell you, I think I mentioned this the last time, but I noticed for me, I was getting to work and I couldn't focus, and my days, it just was ridiculous. And the reason being was I was spending a lot of time on electronic device, even though that was my Bible reading plan and other things. I was spending a lot of time on electronic device first thing in the morning. And I decided, you know what? No electronics in the morning for me at all. And it's literally drastically changed my entire focus for the whole day. Because my mind is not, when you're on an electronic device, you know how it is. You've got pop-ups, you got everything else, and you're constantly, okay, I'm going to check my Facebook, I'm going to check my email, I'm going to read my Bible, and all this stuff, and now your mind's already going a mile a minute, not focusing on any one thing. And so that's something that we've done. For us, I would suggest to you, in the car, any trip less than an hour, no electronics. That is perfect quality talking time. And unless they want to get run over by a semi, they can't get out. All right? That's a great time for conversation. And you say, they drive me crazy in the car. Well, you had these kids, okay? So that's your burden, all right? So that's a great time. And for us, my folks live in Fort Worth, and so when we go there for Christmas, usually they can't get a device until we get to Buc-ee's. And about then, we're all tapped out anyway. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're like, please, watch a movie. But, those are good times, okay? When you're at restaurants, those are other good times, Make them put their phones away when you're at a restaurant and actually talk to you. Have conversations. And you do the same thing. There's almost nothing in most of our worlds that has to have our attention immediately, okay? That can't wait for us to be done with lunch and back home. So those are some things that you can do. Set up times of day that when they're not allowed. And I say all electronics, whether it's the TV, don't let them get around it. Oh, it's just my Kindle, it's just a book. Well, no, it's more than that, okay? Don't allow students to have electronic devices in the room at bedtime. This is huge. I don't really want you to know, because you'd be appalled, hopefully, the amount of time teenagers are on their electronics throughout the night. It's most of them and all the time. In fact, 75% of young people with smartphones use their phones at night. Now, that doesn't mean they're looking at things that are inappropriate. They're texting their friends. They're checking their social media. That's what they're doing. Their phone will buzz in the middle of the night, and they will look at that text, and they will follow that text stream, and they will converse. That's what they do. It is a reality. Your child is probably doing it. You say they need it for their alarm. Well, they make ones, you remember. All right? They plug in, okay? Or there, we'll talk about some with tools as we get there, but you can lock those things down. But I would suggest, until they're an older high schooler, again, as they become an older high schooler, we're going to give them more freedom so they begin to learn. They're going off on their own. They've got to learn how to work within the device that they have. But up to a certain age, you have to decide that their devices are on your dresser in your bedroom, where they can't even have it. Just take that temptation away. I think that's important. Sleep deprivation. Listen, just Google search sleep deprivation in teenagers today. It's ridiculous, the amount of things. 75% of teens using their cell phones at night. This is just one article. Neuroscientists discovered that bright screen lights from computer devices decrease melatonin, which affects the body's sleeping and waking cycles. The medical community recommends that children 7 to 12 years old get 10 to 11 hours of sleep, and 12 to 18-year-olds get at least 8 to 9 hours per night. Unfortunately, about 45% of adolescents get less than 8 hours of sleep at night. 28% of high school kids falling asleep in school at least once a week. Sleep deprivation is affecting their health. The trend of sleep deprivation is leading to many daytime problems for teenagers. Headaches, impaired concentration, weakened immune systems, crankiness, increased use of nicotine, caffeine, and hyperactive behavior, often misconstrued as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Any of your kids complaining about headaches all the time? Complaining about inability to focus all the time? Adderall might not help because it may not be ADD or ADHD. It may be they're on their electronics too much. It may be they're not sleeping. Maybe they're not sleeping. If you've ever talked to the medical professional or anybody in that community, they'll talk to you about sleep and the importance of it. Your body has to have it. I know personally, when I'm not getting it, my body just shuts down. So they have to have it, and they're not getting it because they're on their devices at night. So we've got to be aware of that and make steps to help them in that. Again, they're not going to make those choices on their own. Do not allow a child under 13 to be on social media at all. Almost all of the experts come back and say no child under the age of 13 should be allowed on social media, period. In fact, COPPA, C-O-P-P-A, which is the Children's Online Protection Act, there's another P in there, don't allow any social media outlet to market or work with or take information from any child under the age of 13. Why? They've done the research and they've found it's detrimental. So that's what the professionals say. That's what the law is for companies like Facebook and others. They're probably not wrong here. 13's probably really kind of young anyway, but that's what the law has said for them. So Facebook, that's why anytime your kid wants to get on a social media site, they ask that, are you over 13 years of age? You might not know that, and they're already on Facebook or Instagram, and they just said yes and moved on. They really wish there was a better way to put a gateway up there other than just making them check a box that says they're over at 13, but they can't necessarily do that. So, but that's where most of the experts are as far as that's concerned. So experts also agree children under the age of 12 should not have their own portable electronic devices. Why? We mentioned several of these. ADD, impaired learning, increased impulsivity, cognitive delays, epidemic obesity, and delayed development. There's very few positive. If you find research about the positive impacts of electronic devices under the age of 12, they're probably done by a company that's trying to sell you electronic devices. So just bear in mind who's doing the research. You know, when you see a commercial on TV by Fisher-Price, this is linked to all these positive in children's development. What's their goal? To take your money. Things that take batteries. I think Duracell is owned by Play School. I really do. But we've got to be careful with that. This is what the research shows us. But again, those are your choices to make as parents. But just so you know, most experts don't recommend that. I would say consider not giving your child a smartphone until high school. Now don't panic. You're like, I've got to be able to protect them. I've got to know where they are. They make these things. They still make them. They're cheaper. They're called dumb phones. All right? Some of you have them. You prefer them. They talk, they text, that's it. If you want your child to be able to connect with you before high school age, I recommend a phone that does not have access to the world. They can call you, they can text you, you can set up lists of people they can call and text, but they don't need access. They're just not there yet. And they're going to throw a temper tantrum, I promise. And if they already have one, maybe you have some conversations and you help them understand where you're coming from, and maybe you take a step back, and that's where we as parents admit some mistakes. Look, we made that mistake. And maybe you disagree, and that's your prerogative to make. But my recommendation is, they don't need it. They just don't need it. They need to be out playing. They need to be connecting with friends the old-fashioned way at that point. Their brains don't need to be constantly jumping all over the page at that very important times of development. And again, so you want them to connect with you. That I understand. Why wouldn't I give them a phone so they can call me in the case of emergency? Completely agree with you. Give them a phone they can call and text. And guess what? They're a lot cheaper on your plan probably too. They don't break as easily. They don't cost $700. There's a lot of positives there. If they drop them in the commode or wherever, no big deal. $10 at Walmart will get you another one. So there's the things that you can do again as you begin to help them move into. I think it also gives them something to look forward to. You know, hey, on your such and such birthday, whatever age they turn in 14, typically around 9th grade, we'll get you a smartphone. You know, maybe that, give them something to look forward to. I think it's one of the things that impairs our kids today is that they've done it all by the time they're in 6th grade. So why would I go to homecoming? I've already been. I've had mums and everything else already. You know, I mean, why would I do this? I've already done all that. Why would I go to camp? I've already been to 75 camps. You know, why would I do all this stuff? They have nothing in life to look forward to because it's all been done by the time they're 12. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set limits and say, nope, you get a smartphone when you're 14. Period. That's it. We're not going to argue about it. We'll give you a dumb phone at age 11, but smartphone, not so much. Set those boundaries, set those guidelines. Again, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong if you're doing it that way. That's just my recommendation. That's what we'll do with our kids. So, I'm not standing up here telling you one thing and doing another. And they're going to hate us for it. I can already tell you they're going to hate us for it. Discuss and set privacy settings on devices. All of the devices that they have, you can set their ability to be accessed, GPS locations, all those things, you can set those things. If you don't know how, just YouTube it. Set privacy settings on an iPhone, whatever, or your Google device or whatever it is. They're out there. They want to help you protect your kids. You can set those devices up. The same is true with PlayStations, Wiis, computers, every electronic device, even TVs. A lot of TVs, you can go in and set the filtering of what is allowed to come through your actual television. All that technology is out there. You just have to be aware of it. And a lot of times we're not, because again, we're not tech savvy, most of us. We're just like, hey, that's really cool that my fantasy football team can be on the side of the screen while I watch the football game. I mean, what's better than that? I don't have one of those. I wish I did. But we're just like, hey, that's really cool. We get that set up. Great. They go in as soon as they get a device, and they're going to spend all the time in the world. They can figure out all the bells and whistles and everything else. You know, like when you get a new car, guys, and you pull out the manual, you want to know everything that baby can do. They want to know about that with their devices. And so they do that. They explore it. And they can probably tell you, hey, how do you set up the parent settings? Oh, just click here and here and here. They can do that. Listen, I mean, Kristen, I work with Kristen, she's my associate, and there's a lot of times I'm like, hey, I need help. And so she understands that better than I do, and she can certainly help me with that. Install monitoring and blocking. Oh, we went backwards somehow. Richard, can you catch me up? Are you still back there? Install monitoring and blocking software. Awesome. Goes. Boom. There it is. Install monitoring and blocking software. Again, depending on the age your child is, there's plenty of things out there that can monitor your kids' phones and block unwanted things. You need to do that. If you haven't done that, you need to do that. We'll talk about a couple of those here in just a second. But those are so important for us to do. We have to protect them to the point that we can. And before they're age 13-ish, we have to completely lock those suckers down. We have to approve every friend request. We have to approve every person they're communicating with. All of their apps can be set to private. So Instagram, Facebook, again, they're not on Facebook. I don't want to say that because we're all on Facebook. They can be set to private. What that means is no one can friend them without their explicit permission. So if Brooke wants to be my friend on Instagram, then he's going to click, hey, I want to be Brian's friend on Instagram, and then it's going to tell me, hey, Brooke wants to be my friend. So for me, hey, great, that's cool. But for you as a parent, you say, hey, nobody friends you without my permission. And so again, you're having communication. Hey, so-and-so wants to be a friend on Instagram. Okay, no big deal. Or so-and-so does. Okay, who is this person? How do you know them? And it's not just a hey check. How do you know this person? Why does this 18-year-old want to be your friend? You're 13. Well, it's probably not positive, okay? So just think about those things and install those things on there. Hopefully working again. Treat media as you would any other environment in your child's life. Talk about it. We talk about don't talk to strangers in the real world. We talked about that briefly, but what is the same thing applies? How they work in real life now has to apply in their digital life because that is real life for them. For us, they're two different things. For them, it's one and the same. So we have to understand that. We have to treat it like anything else in life. Don't run out in front of cars. Look both ways before you cross the street. These things have to apply to their presence online as they deal with it. So a lot of information there. There's tons more. I couldn't get to it all, but I want to talk about some tools. I keep jumping back somehow, Richard. Would you give me the tools, please, sir? That's why I got Richard back there. He's a pro. Some things to help you guys as you navigate. First of all, I mentioned this last one together, iParent.tv. You want this site. Write it down. iParent TV, they do their best to lay out all the apps, all the devices, all the social media, positives, negatives. Should my child use this? Why does it exist? What does it do? How does it work? It's the best site I've ever seen, the most exhaustive, stuff I've never heard of, stuff you've never heard of. Most likely, again, I'll list the 3 that we've heard of: Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. Okay, there's like 1,000 others. We only know the bigger ones, but This is a great, great, great website. Okay, if you need a pen, Kristen's passing those around. Rightclickbook.com. This is a book put out by Fuller Youth Institute out of Fuller Seminary in California. They do tons and tons of research on all things about students, but you can buy this book. It's a great book helping parents and families navigate through this world of social media and how to deal with it, how to make that culture shift, even discussion questions you can discuss with your kiddos. A lot of that you can go online. This app sheet was something that they developed, which I think is really cool, actually. And you're like, this is dumb, you know. And maybe your kids are certainly going to think that, but hey, you know, better safe than sorry. But this is something they came up with, a request for app. It's a free download on their website. And it just asks, okay, your kid wants the new app on their phone. Okay, what app do you want? What's the category, today's date? They're going to do all the homework, all right? They're going to do all the research. This is good, okay? Because then you don't have to. And you're going to answer, you're like, what do all these questions mean? They know, okay? They'll figure it out. And on the back, it's like, why? Why do you want this? What are you going to do with it? And then they bring it to you and say, hey, I want this app. And you can look at all this. And I suggest not immediately saying yes or no. I suggest then, okay, I'm going to take this and I'll let you know tomorrow. And I'm going to go online to do some research. I'm going to text my youth pastor and say, hey, should they have this app? I'm going to text other parents. We talked about the very importance of other parents. It's going to be on our list here in a minute. So that's a great thing there. Other parents, there it is. Other parents. Guys, don't live in a bubble. Don't live in a bubble. There are people in this room who have already experienced the good and the absolute awful of social media. Don't live in a bubble. There are people in here that this is their job. This is the world they work in, or they work with young people who have gotten in trouble because of this type of thing. Don't think you're the only one. You're not. Okay? So ask your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. A lot of you are good about on Facebook just putting a post up there. Hey, my kid wants a smartphone. What do you think? And of course, then you get everything in the world. But that's good. There's wisdom in many counselors. Hey, my kid wants Snapchat. Just put it on your Facebook. See what other parents. Oh yeah, we got it. We love it. Oh, don't do that. And so do your research. Okay, trust other parents. Listen to other parents. You know, again, Kristen and I are great resources for you. It's our job. Okay, so don't hesitate to ask us as well. I also have kids, so you know I can help you with that too. But talk to each other. That's your greatest resource. Is your greatest resource is each other. Okay, because you're navigating this together. All right, you know, even when you're in conversation with other parents. Disney Circle. This is a relatively new deal. There's a couple of these on the market. I think this is the cheapest one. We picked one up and have been testing it just so we can tell you guys about it. But basically what it does is you plug it into your wireless network. And any device at home, and any device that gets on your wireless network, it tells you about. But the benefit is you set up user profiles. And so I would set up a user profile for me and one for Paula and one for each of the kids. And so if they have a device, you assign that device to that person, and then you go in and you say, hey, they can use this app, they can use that app, they can't use that app, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do this. Oh, and by the way, they can only be on Facebook for 30 minutes. That's the limit we decided on the family. And at 30 minutes time, guess what happens? Circle stops their phone from being able to connect to Facebook. All right? You can set times of day and block these things. Now again, your 18-year-old, you shouldn't be blocking them at 30 minutes. You should have set the boundaries and say you can have an hour of Facebook, and then you should be communicating with them. By then, your 18-year-old, it shouldn't be the device stops, the device is their self-control. You want to, again, help them learn. But your younger kids, absolutely. Absolutely. And you may say in our home, hey, at 10 p.m., all devices are for everybody, boom, nobody can use them. There's also a button on there, maybe you've seen the commercial where mom's trying to get on Netflix and everybody's on, and she can't because everybody's streaming everything, and she hits the pause button for everybody but mama. And she can cancel the internet for everybody except herself, right? That's a fun thing. So that's a really good one. SafeEyes.com, this is internet filtering software. It's one of the best out there you can put on your computer. Typically, this is going to sound terrible, I prefer the secular protective browsers than the Christian-based ones, because the Christian-based ones make all the decisions for you. Safe Eyes lets you as the parent go in and set what restrictions you want for what user. Okay, I think that's important because I don't need my filtering software to decide whether or not I want my kid on YouTube. That's my decision, not theirs. So this is a good one just for computer filtering. CPYU.org, Center for Parent Youth Understanding. Guys, this guy named Walt Mueller, all he does is research stuff that is impacting your teenager. That's all he does. And he wants you to be informed. This website's free, okay? Every day he's updating stuff, culture, devices. He also has this next site, digitalkidsinitiative.com. That's where this contract came from. Their goal is to help you navigate this world. But he deals with everything youth culture all the time. Okay, you want to be following his website. A lot of these you can sign up for, and they'll send you daily emails. When you talk about devices, I haven't tested these two out, but these were some of the most popular ones that came up as I did a search as far as putting a device, an app on their phone that you can monitor, because there are those. There are things that you can put on their actual phones that gives you complete control over the phone, to the point where you can see every text message, you can block certain users, you can know every chat they've had with anybody ever. You can do those things. So you can see those in the world. A couple of those, mymobilewatchdog.com and netnanny.com are some of those that are out there and available to you. I'll leave those up there for a second if you want to write those in. If you don't get them all, just shoot me an email and ask, we'll get them to you. But guys, at the end of the day, you can either let everybody else control your kid's device, or you can teach them. We have to teach them. And we have to model for them. We have to create an environment, a culture